Hello, everybody. Welcome to the contributors meeting. I'm going to be your host today. I'm Leo, and let me share my screen. You see my browser, right?
Yep.
Cool. All right. So starting with triage and discussions, we had Alex and Reggie this week. Anything to bring up to this uh, forum?
I think Reggie had one.
Yes. Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, actually, if you can open this one, this is an interesting enhancement that I wanted to discuss and see whether this is something that everyone thinks should be in.
Yeah, I briefly looked at it. It seems the proposal here is user is complaining that if GitHub is down, they cannot roll back. So yeah, Argo CD will uh, depend on Git to be available during rollback. And he's suggesting to Argo CD to persist something somewhere so we can roll back even if Git is down.
Do
So I guess that's the ask.
Yeah.
do we already have the files in Redis or not?
Um, we have the diff history. I'm not sure if it's safe to, yeah, I'm not sure from the top of my mind if the state is in Redis. I don't think, even if it is, it's probably just the latest, not all the history. So
We have manifests. The manifests are keyed on a commit hash as well as any relevant parameters embedded in the application spec. So that key becomes invalid at the moment anything in the app spec changes. So we couldn't do a rollback if the app spec had changed. I'm not sure how long those manifest keys stay around. I think there's a TTL on the Redis key. In general, I don't know if the feature is worth the overhead of building it. I think that having GitOps depend on Git's pretty reasonable, but I think there's some of the infrastructure in place to make it possible.
I think Redis itself seems like unreliable source. In particular, well, it can just like restart and like nuke everything. But given that there's been some like Git outages, well, I guess it may be fueled by like a recent GitOps outage, where like basically no commands in Git worked and like Argo CD was unable to do anything. So I can imagine that people maybe like if they kind of want more extra reliability and like need to do rollback at this time, so this feature may be valuable. I don't have a strong opinion about whether it's worth it to implement. Like in principle, I would agree this feature is useful. We can try to persist something in like some history in like application, but we need to be aware that application itself can be like pretty large. I already encountered with some like large applications, they can hit like 256 kilobyte limit, and like so like for example, I was unable to put certain applications as a part of app of apps because of this reason. And I think Kubernetes itself doesn't have this strict of a limit, and you can still like have some objects, but I'm not entirely sure. So like overall, yeah, we need to be like we probably need a more detailed proposal to like decide if it's worth it.
yeah, agree with that. It seems like a reasonable amount of complexity to add in the project. Okay,
Yeah, makes
so
sense.
okay, I will reply back to the person on, is this, yeah, it's recent. Okay. Right. Thanks, Reggie. Anything else from triage and discussion that worth mentioning here?
Not from my side.
Okay. All right. Anything from your side, Alex?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. And any volunteers for triage and discussion next week? We need a primary and secondary.
I could do next week.
Okay.
I can vouch for secondary if it's good.
All right, so we have Ishita if here. And Mitish. Thank you. All right. Moving on. Yeah, so last week we had weekly stats. I used the tool provided by Pasha. It's really good. So if you ever have to update this list, use this tool provided in the link. It's really great. So yeah. So this is how the stat looks for this week. And thanks everybody for the contributions. Moving on with the discussion for the first topic, we have Jack Reed. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I see you in the call. You wanna mention about this one? You want to share your screen? You want me to click the link? Up to you.
You can click the link.
Okay.
Okay, so this PR is about adding the workload identity support for Git and OCR repositories. It had gone through reviews. I believe Andre and Reggie had reviewed this PR already. We need like someone with approver permissions to review this PR.
Okay. Can you just provide a very brief overview on what
Uh,
you're doing here?
Yeah,
And
so basically today, if somebody is trying to use Argo CD with Azure DevOps and Azure Container Registry, they can do that. But for Azure DevOps, they need to add pad token, which they need to rotate every some time after like the lifetime of the pad token. And similarly, for connecting to Azure Container Registry for OCI artifacts, they need to create an AD app and a secret. That secret needs to be stored on the cluster, and it has to be manually managed. So using the workload identity mechanism, they can use managed identities to connect. So basically, it becomes credential-free authentication for for the end user. They will have to provision workload identity, set it up with the Argo CD deployment, and once it is set up, they can simply configure the the access to that Git repository or the Azure Container Registry for that identity, and it can be used directly.
Okay, it looks like a really good feature to have. I guess the challenge that we have as maintainers and reviewers is really validating and testing this type of PRs because we, for example, at Intuit, we don't use Azure, and yeah, that's the challenge that we have to really move forward with the review. So any easy steps that you can suggest to reproduce this and test and validate for whoever is reviewing it?
It will need an Azure environment to do that.
Which environment was that?
An Azure AKS
Azure
cluster.
environment? Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I have updated the documentation. Basically, if you go to the files, so basically in the Argo CD deployment, we need to on the service account and the deployment, we need to set two annotations.
So which file are you referring
Uh,
to?
if you go to it's in the docs. I just up
The docs?
yeah. If it's
Operator manual, user.
yeah, if you go to declarative setup, yeah. Okay, yeah. So basically, we need to add a label on the pod. Azure Workload Identity use true, line 294, and this label need to be added. Then on the service account, we need to add two annotations, line 296, Azure Workload Identity, which will be the client ID of the managed entity, and this needs to be added. Once this is done, we just need to create like a repository, which is below is an example in which you need to set use Azure workload identity to true. Once it is done, you're good to go.
Let's see. Okay. The overall, the PR looks good. It has documentation. Let's see. not sure about tests. But yeah, I guess at this point it's really having the availability from one of the reviewers to continue the work here.
Was this tested by like other users than yourself on Azure?
Uh, I'm not sure. Only at this point, only I have tested this.
Yeah, so if we can just find another user that use Azure that can try that on their side, and then like we can review the code, but at least having someone else, someone external that has tested it and have used it would be good.
Do we have anybody who can do that? Who, because for example, in our case we use AWS, so I cannot unfortunately do this.
Or maybe provide a recording on the steps and you know, showing how the user experience is going to look like.
Sure, I can do that. I can create a recording on that.
So we can visualize how the connectivity and everything is being configured and what's the end result. So you tested this in locally or in your company's servers?
No, I tested it in a company server. It is deployed and tested. So I work for
Okay.
Microsoft.
Okay.
And so we are planning to integrate, uh, create an extension for Argo CD for Azure Kubernetes Service. So that is
Okay.
why this work item we are planning to implement for that integration.
I mean, if
Yes.
you work at Microsoft and you're ready to support that, if there's any issues, I think we can merge that.
Yeah, we are ready to support any issues with this. Yeah.
All right. I can try to take a look and approve. It's already been reviewed, so 211. Okay.
Cool. Thank you, Alex. All right. You had one more link in your.
Yes, the second PR is similarly, it is for Entra SSO, using workload identity in Entra SSO. So this works a little differently, so it's why it's a separate PR. But the end result from the user, it is the same. So instead of user using a secret, so if in the OIDC config, users have to provide a client secret today. So instead of providing a client secret, they will just have to use your worker identity, and the Entra SSO login will start working seamlessly.
Is this PR dependent on the previous one?
No, it doesn't depend on the previous one.
Okay. I see.
All right. I'll try to take a look at both of these.
This isn't reviewed yet. Yeah, and you were working on this last week. Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, Alex, for reviewing this. And yeah, good luck with that. Check Pete. All right. Michael, you have a topic, Argo CD 3.0. You want to say a few words about it?
Yeah, so we merged the code changes that are necessary for this release cycle to be the 3.0 release cycle. I have put up pull requests to deprecate or remove a couple different features. One of them is Argo CDCM-based repo configuration, since we've been on secret-based repo configuration for a long time. So that PR is up and ready for review. Even folks who don't want to review the code, I've written documentation for people to like check whether they're using the old style config and then migrate. So if you have time to read those docs and review that, it would be appreciated. The second change I put up was removing, oh gosh, I've got to remember what the heck I was removing. It had to do with application sets, some small strange behavior that we wanted to remove. Oh yeah, when you're using merge or matrix generators, there's by default we ignore any nested selectors that you define, which is weird. So we had to add a flag to turn on respecting nested selectors. So the change is to always respect nested selectors and remove the flag. So that PR is up, and the docs are a bit more involved because it basically explains to people, okay, here's how to tell if you have an application set that has this problem, and here's how to fix it. So if you use merge matrix generators, particularly nested generators, please go take a look at that pull request and look at the docs and see if they make sense. And that's it for me. 3.0 is on its way.
Good stuff. Thank you, Michael, for leading this initiative. Yeah, looking
So
forward to
this
it.
means that we will not be having 2.15, right?
Correct. If everything goes to plan, we will not have 2.15. We'll go straight into 3.0.
Cool. Well, moving on, Reggie, you have two topics. First one, sync window. It's a 2022 proposal by
True.
Michael. Yeah.
True.
So, yeah, you wanna say a few words about it?
Yeah. So basically, currently the sync windows are on an application project scope, and it looks like it can be beneficial for having those potentially tied to applications and not necessarily to application projects, and then having a separate CRD for the sync windows so that they basically stop living in the application project CRD. So I wanted to ask whether there is support for this feature, or whether there are any strong objections against.
I remember having a small, yeah, reaction from especially Alex when I people were discussing about introducing new CRDs in the project. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I kind of like the proposal. I'm personally not against it. Not sure about the others in the call.
Yeah, if it's like there are values to have a CRDs, there are values to embed that in a config map and just use the config map type. Uh, that's that they should be compared. But yeah, no strong opinions.
Would you be planning to working on this, Reggie?
Well, if there aren't any strong objections, then I have someone in my company who actually wants to work on that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there are strong objections on this. It's just thinking about how to provide new CRDs in the project is not something that happens on every release. Yeah, maybe something
I,
that can be planned for 3.0 if that makes sense. I don't know.
I think too the proposal should focus a bit more on how like the applications field, because right now that's how it applies to application. Now, if you use a ref, now you have a global sync windows that is referenced but have an applications filter. So those were like filters that are they make sense when it's defined on the app project, but if you have a global sync window, they don't make sense. So like the cluster selectors, the application selectors, and namespace, more thought should be more put into that to design something that do make sense.
So for you, it doesn't make sense on the project level or on the application level?
It makes sense if it's embedded in the app project, but if you create a global sync windows and you start adding like namespace filter, cluster filters, and stuff like that, it doesn't make sense because you're going to go in your application and you're going to reference that sync windows. So it should apply to that application. We can write something in the and discuss more in the issue.
Okay.
Okay. Would you mind adding your concern here in this issue, Alex, and we continue from there? Okay. Moving on. You have another topic, Reggie? Add bearer token.
Yes, actually, this is it's interesting because we have just discussed a PR that's in a way is similar with the Azure workload identity. So this pull request is adding the support for bearer token auth, and this one is like already relevant for working with Bitbucket because Bitbucket they have project tokens, project tokens, and those tokens cannot be used in basic auth. So those require bearer token authentication, as opposed to regular tokens they have that can be used as a password in a basic auth. This one cannot. And so I have added the support for this, also provided relevant CLI changes, documentation, and tests, and tested it on our internal Bitbucket server to make sure that it actually works. So I just wanted to ask for a review on this when someone has time.
Just off the top of my head, I wonder about whether bearer token will work for non-Git repo secrets. So, like, could I pull a Helm chart or an OCI repo using this? And if not, do we need like documentation, or is that just a missing feature?
Okay, that's interesting. I actually didn't test it for the Helm registries. So maybe this should be scoped to at least at the beginning. Maybe this should be scoped to Git.
That works, just as long as it's like documented or whatever's appropriate there.
Okay, so this would require a documentation change or a code change to make it more scoped to Git.
I forget exactly how the repo secret structure is. I'm not sure if it's like a different struct used for Git versus Helm repo credentials. If it's a different struct, I think we're in good shape. If it's a shared struct and we like can unmarshal a secret into a Helm code path with a bearer token, and that bearer token just is never used, that would be problematic. But if it's two different structs and the code path is totally isolated to just handling Git, then I think we're fine.
Okay, so I will have another check on that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Reggie. Moving on, Kapil is making time out. So are you in the call? Doesn't seem like he is. I looked in the issue. It seems that there is this ongoing discussion here, and the thing is, they noticed that for some reason, when retrieving the groups during the authentication, it takes more than 30 seconds, which is the timeout limit configured and hard-coded in Argo CD. And basically this is for making it configurable. Alex added a comment here that I kind of agree, like even if we make it configurable, expecting users to wait for more than 30 seconds to log in is not really an ideal user experience, to say the least. So I'm not sure what the proper solution would be in this case. And also adding yet another configuration to Argo CD that already has like a huge amount of knobs would make it even more complicated. Not sure. I remember maintainers having opinions against adding new configurations. So is someone against adding this additional timeout configuration to Argo CD, or
I mean, on my
something that we
side, I
should
want to
allow.
see a DEX PR first or some POC trying to do parallel index because the issue is on the DEX side. And yeah, the new config doesn't make sense. Like a login page for more than 30 seconds is just not
Yeah,
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 like
you're right.
it's just not a good UI.
Yeah, I think I remember GitLab's folks fixed this issue by avoiding retrieving uh, transitive dependencies in groups. Like they don't just bring the top level group, and they don't try to search uh, by subgroups, and that improved a lot their API. They did it internally in the API itself. So I'm not sure if maybe Dex has some similar approach to that could speed things up. But yeah, I'll add a comment here as well. And I guess that's it for this one. Moving on, we have Andrew list. Hey, Andrew. First
Oh,
one.
yeah. Sorry, we have a bit of like a power outage in the area, so I'm a bit dark now. But for somehow internet still works, which is great. So yeah, let's go. So this is like a follow-up on the like previous conversation. So I submitted a PR to GitOps engine, and I want to discuss one thing. During implementation, I realized that previously discussed approach for this like uh, thing with like never like directive. I think it's still better to have like one sync and we just change semantics of replace, like replace if allowed, instead of having like two separate syncs, because like separate syncs kind of get clunky. And like for
Is
example, you need to,
this, so,
yeah,
sorry, Andrew, to interrupt. Is this related to the discussion that we had last week about
yes,
avoiding users to hit the replace checkbox while doing Argo City
yes,
syncs?
yes,
Okay.
that's the
And
one.
during that discussion, we suggested to have something in the UI to make it
Yes,
clear for the users. So is this a continuation on that?
yes, it's a continuation, and I just want to make some updates, and like I just realized that I think we need to change course a little bit.
Okay.
So yeah, basically, I just think it's like at least from in terms of GitOps engine, for example, and implementation and other parts, it makes more sense to just have a thing where you check for each resource, should you do a replace on it or force on it, or should you not? It makes like logic much like easier to reason about. If you try to do separation on like higher level about like just not make it available for users to like do replace on objects which are not allowed, you still kind of need to add checks on GitOps engine because like what if people submit API call which adds like resources which are not supposed to be added? You still kind of need to validate that, and it's like becomes a bit clunky. Plus, I don't know, doing two syncs is also kind of clunky, and interaction with auto sync is like maybe like weird. Um, so I think like overall, just having a single sync with just like pe people just should be aware that if they're using this feature and like put annotations never or always, or like put like configuration that certain resources should also be like never replaced or always replaced. For example, deployments, like all deployments, then they just need to be aware that yes, like there would be some like combination of like replace and like no replace when they click the option. But ideally, yeah, it's kind of like it becomes a bit more like advanced feature that because normally people just generally don't need to use replace, but it kind of would be expected that if need to use replace, then they would kind of need to know that yes, there are certain configurations in this like system that replace for some stuff is like not allowed, and for some stuff they can do it or something like that. I can also add documentation later, like to clarify all of this. But yeah, I just wanted to like get another opinion on this, like follow up, and
From the
maybe like
top of
make
my
a time check PR.
From the top of my head, one thing I remember, which is a special condition to have replace in GitOps Engine, is for applying CRDs in the cluster because CRDs can be very, very huge in size. If you do client-side apply, it will put the entire state in the last applied configuration annotation. and that annotation has a limit, a size limit, and it
Oh yeah.
breaks. So
Yeah.
you cannot apply large CRDs if you don't have replace.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
That's fine. Yeah, for CRDs specifically, like so this option would not be enabled at all by default. So like you can just if you don't configure anything, you just can replace everything like, that's gonna be like typical behavior. And then I don't expect people configure like prohibitions to replace do not replace CRDs specifically. Like at least in my use case, it's gonna be applied to like deployments, stateful sets, daemon sets, like everything which can have pods. And that's about it. So basically, like I would expect that it's like a more like a targeted thing where like at least like CRDs should not be like impacted. I don't see a good reason to prohibit the replace of CRDs. But if people want to do that, they can. It's just, yeah.
I guess the point is how the feature will work together with the current logic that we have, right? So I'm not
Uh,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Honestly, I'm confused about what you're proposing.
Oh, so basically, like for example, like simple case. Let's just like talk about uh directive to replace always or replace never, which is put as annotation on specific resources. So regular sync. And there is an annotation on certain like deployment replace always. Uh, by the way, can you hear me? It says internet connections
Yeah,
unstable.
your voice is starting to
Is it also
distort a little bit. Yeah, but keep
Yeah.
okay?
going.
Uh, okay. Let me know if you start seeing issues because yeah, this power outage. I still don't know how internet is working. I can switch to my internet, but hope I can finish at least with this thing. So yeah, suppose we have like annotation for the certain like deployment resource with like always. Then like we do a sync, and then like everything is synced without replace, but then this like deployment would be replaced. And the
So
opposite.
your suggestion
Suppose
is to
like
introduce a new annotation that can be added at the resource level. Is that your suggestion?
that's a part of it, yes. So that would be annotation. There would also be configuration resource group kind. So you can configure, let's say, for example, for deployment, do
And where this
replace never.
configuration would go for the group kind
Argo
configuration,
CD
where
config map.
Argo CD config map. Okay, and then if someone configures the kind CRD to be never replaced, what happens?
Well, they can like well they would run into issues that you describe.
Okay, I
So, but I
guess
think that should be by documentation to like just I would add documentation which warns of these edge cases and say, well, hey, use sparingly, like make sure you actually don't need to replace those resources and like aware of like various potential edge cases with them.
Yeah. It makes sense, but it's a core feature, so it takes more time to review.
Yeah,
In my
I think it's like overall it's not that big of a change. Basically, like replace always is same as current replace true. Like it seems like exactly the same, just different word. Replace never adds a bit of extra logic and like well replace for specific like resource group kind also has a bit of extra logic, but like I kind of created helper functions which just do like check for conditions for each resource. Like basically I modified should we do replace, should we do force, and I added like just helper functions for that, and they just became a bit more complex than they used to be. And that's for GitOps engine part. Yeah, by the way, I need to update this proposal.
Yeah,
And
can you please add in the proposal the examples on
yeah,
different
sure,
places
sure,
users can add to enable
sure.
or disable, and
Yeah,
how exactly this is going to look like?
yeah, sure. We'll do.
Okay,
Uh,
all right, great. Thanks, Andrew. Is it okay to move on to the next one?
yes.
All right, allow specifying parent-child relationship.
Oh, I think link broke for this. Uh,
The link?
I actually at least. Oh, okay. Maybe it's just like the sync on my end. Wait, No, it's okay. Yeah, so it's like it's okay. Let's just go to the another item. I'll fix the link later.
Right? This one?
Yes.
Getting logged out in 5 minutes while
Oh, okay.
they
Let's see.
upload
Make or something. Oh, okay. All right. You know what? Let's just skip my items. I'll like do next time and just go to other people items.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me take those four out of today's and put it here so we don't miss them. Okay? All right.
Party and Mats.
I had responded to Andre's comments, Alexandre's comments, sorry, and I was hoping that we could merge this PR, or if not, I wanted to know what else folks would like me to do.
Yeah, I'll take a look again. I haven't had time to get to it, but I also want that to get merged. Probably, well, it needs to be merged in 3.0, so maybe we need to do some change for 3.0, but this could also be backported in.
I did, even with the changes, the latest changes that were requested, I tried my best to implement it in such a way that there are two commits, and the second of those two commits can be reverted when it's time for that to become the default behavior. So basically, it implements the fine-grained RBAC, and then a second commit puts it behind a feature flag. Of course, that's the hope. Whether or not it works out perfectly that way remains to be seen, but hopefully it at least alleviates some of that load when the time comes.
Yeah, I'll try to find time to get to it.
Okay,
It sounds
thank you so
good.
much.
All right. Moving on. Nitish, you're in the call. So
Yeah. Hi, Leo. I actually want to get some feedback on this issue. So this issue actually adds about introducing the set parameter to the Argo CD app set command, just like how you have the set command for your Argo CD app. So one of the things that I would like to confirm is if we're introducing the set parameter for Argo CD app set command, what are the fields or what are the flags that we would want it to have that can be modified for an app set? Do we want it to specifically focus on updating the fields under the spec section of an app set? Or do we want it specifically to update the fields meant in the template section of an app set? I asked this question, I think, on the issue itself, and the author has given like a feedback on what are the things that he would want it to be like. And I pretty much like the way that has been described, but just want to get a feedback on this and get this moving forward then.
any strong objection on having this imperative form of mutating upsets?
Philosophical objection, yeah.
I knew it.
I
Yeah.
mean, people really should be doing stuff via Git, but I understand why they don't. I think the spec, so the template dot spec fields make kind of sense. So I could do Argo CD app sets target revision, and it would set the target revision in the template field. And obviously, I could embed whatever templating inside of that value that I wanted. That makes sense to me. Setting the Git revision in a generator is trickier because you're dealing with arrays. The Git generator they're talking about would be at spec.generators index 0.github.target revision or something like that. That gets dicey. So I think in that case, I would tell them go to the API.
Wouldn't the solution of this be similar to what was implemented for the auto sync, like auto sync feature, so generated appset won't override the auto sync setting of generated apps, so that would be similar where appset don't override the set parameters of the generated apps. Because in the end, the goal is to set, what's the goal? Is it to set that on an app set or on all the applications? Because if your app set manage 4 of your environments, I assume you don't want to set that in the app set template. It doesn't make sense. You want to set it per environment. So I don't really understand the business case out of that.
Based on the comment a little bit further down, they listed the 2 fields that they want to edit. Yeah, so good point. Actually, in my case, I need to change 2 fields. They want to set the get generator revision and they want to set the target revision for all apps at once. Of course, their proposal there is Argo CD app set generator get revision XYZ. The question then becomes which get generator.
I think this adds a burden maintenance, and we should review that carefully.
Yeah,
this is proposal for now. I guess the idea is deciding if we should invest time on this or not.
Yeah, I wouldn't personally invest time in either a code or review for either feature, but out of the 2 features, I think the only one that immediately makes sense is spec.template.spec.source.target revision. The other one just doesn't work unless you get into some really dicey indexing stuff.
So should I eventually ask the author to maybe create a proposal and present it in the meeting, or should I work on this starting with the source.target revision? Like, what should I be doing next?
Unless you need the feature, I wouldn't spend personal time on working on it. I think we've got other stuff that would benefit more from your time. I would point out the issue with the generators array and how that would complicate specification on the command line. And I would ask why they need to imperatively set these fields instead of doing it via GitOps.
Yeah, because they seems to come with like, we need this, but we don't really understand the why they need this. So their proposal, they might actually be able to achieve what they need in another way. We just really need to understand what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree with those. So Nitish, can you follow up with
For sure.
with the user, maybe asking for more details on the reasons and if he consider a GitOps approach in his case and why
For
that
sure.
is not working for them. That would give us more, a better idea of how important this is.
Sure. I'll comment on the issue and get this moving forwards.
Okay, thank you. All right, and we're on time, and we just concluded the topics for today. Thanks everybody for joining. See you next week,
Thanks.
and have a
See
great
you.
rest of your day.
Thanks.
Yep.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.